In the year 2003, South Park looked at people downloading free music and decided the bad guys were the rich rock stars crying about their swimming pools. 13 years later, the show looked at the internet and decided the bad guy was you. Somewhere in between, a kid's cartoon about a mountain town quietly became the longest, angriest argument anyone has ever made about Silicon Valley, and almost nobody noticed it happening. Most people remember the South Park tech episodes as one-off jokes. The Facebook one, the Apple one, the Amazon one. Watched apart, they are funny and forgettable. Watched in order, they are something else entirely. A single story told across 15 years about a town slowly handing its whole life over to companies that arrive looking like gifts and leave looking like traps. Today, I want to walk that road from start to finish and show you the argument hiding underneath the fart jokes. It is sharper, sadder, and more honest than the show ever got credit for. Welcome to East Park. Let's begin. The first punch. Napster, piracy, and who South Park decided to blame long before there was a Facebook to mock or an iPad to sew people into. South Park took its first real swing at the world of technology, and the swing landed in a very different place than people might expect. The year was 2003. The internet was younger and slower and stranger than it is now, and one fight was tearing through it louder than any other. People had figured out how to get music for free. Songs that used to cost money on a shiny disc could now be pulled out of the air, off the computer, for nothing. The companies that sold music were terrified. The famous musicians who made the songs were furious, and the whole country was arguing about whether grabbing a free song off the internet made a person a thief. South Park walked into that argument and made an episode called Christian Rock Hard. It is the 9th show of season 7, and it first aired on October 29th, 2003. To understand why it matters so much to the story of South Park and technology, a person has to understand what was actually happening in the world when it came out, because the episode is soaked in it. Around that time, getting music for free off the internet was the new thing everyone was doing, and no one quite knew the rules for. There were websites and programs that let a person trade songs with strangers, no money changing hands. To the people who made and sold music, this felt like the end of the world. They believed that if everyone could just take songs for free, then no one would ever buy them again, and the whole business of making music would collapse and die. One of the loudest voices in that fight was the band Metallica, and especially its drummer, a man named Lars Ulrich. Metallica took the fight all the way to court, suing one of the most famous free music websites, and the case was front-page news across the country. The richest, most successful musicians in the world were standing up in public and saying that free downloading was destroying them. The fear was real enough that it changed how people thought about the internet itself. For a while, every story about file sharing carried the same dark prediction. Music would die, bands would starve, no one would ever make a song again, because no one would ever get paid for one. Grown-ups who had never touched a computer talked about it like a plague sweeping the land. The biggest names in the business hired lawyers and gave speeches and warned anyone who would listen that a great theft was underway and that the thieves were ordinary people sitting in their bedrooms. That panic is the air the whole episode breathes, and the show clearly found the panic funnier than the so-called crime. That is the exact thing South Park decided to laugh at, and the way it chose to laugh tells you everything about where the show's sympathy sat. The episode has two stories braided together. In one, Cartman starts a Christian music band as part of a bet. In the other, the one that matters here, Stan, Kyle, and Kenny try to download some music off the internet, looking for inspiration for their own band, which they have named Moop. The reason they download it instead of buying it is plain and ordinary. Discs cost too much money, so they grab the songs for free, the way millions of real people were doing at that very moment. They reach for music by big famous artists, the kind of songs anyone might want, and they pull them down without a second thought, because that is simply how getting music had started to work. What happens next is where the joke begins. The second the boys download the music, they are arrested. Not warned, not fined, arrested by the FBI, fast and hard, as if they had robbed a bank. The size of the response compared to the size of the crime is the first thing the show is poking at. Three kids grab some songs, and the full weight of the government comes crashing down on them like they are dangerous criminals. The show is already smiling at how seriously the powerful people were treating this. The man who arrests them is a stern FBI agent named Sergeant Yates, and this episode is the very first time that character ever appears in the show, marking his arrival as a government man before he ever became a regular town policeman in later years. Then comes the part that makes the whole episode famous. An agent sits the boys down to teach them about the terrible damage their downloading has caused, to show them the suffering they have brought into the world. The way it is shown copies an old story, the one where a ghost takes a stingy man around at night to see the harm he has done, the same shape as the famous tale about the miser miser visited by spirits at Christmas. The agent plays the role of the ghost. The boys play the role of the miser being shown the truth. He takes them to witness the carnage, the great suffering their crime has unleashed. And the carnage is this: Lars Ulrich, the rich drummer from Metallica, is shown heartbroken because he wanted to put a gold-plated Shark Tank bar next to his swimming pool, and now, because of all the free downloading, he has to wait a few months before he can install it. The pop star Britney Spears is shown having to give up one private jet for a slightly smaller private jet, one that does not have a fancy remote control for the surround sound movie system inside it. That is the whole joke, and it is a devastating one. The musicians crying about being destroyed by free music are not being destroyed at all. They are sitting on mountains of money, swimming in riches beyond anything a normal person will ever see. The only thing free downloading has done to them is force them to wait a little while for an absurd luxury, or trade one ridiculous toy for a slightly less ridiculous one. They called it the end of the world. The show looked at their actual lives and found men whining about gold-plated shark tanks. The suffering they screamed about was the gap between unimaginable wealth and very slightly less unimaginable wealth. The picture of that suffering is what makes the scene land so hard, because the show draws it with a straight face. The agent presents these scenes as genuine tragedy, as proof of real harm, the way the ghost shows the miser a family in true need, and then the harm turns out to be a shark tank delayed by a few months. The gap between how serious the scene pretends to be and how silly the actual suffering is exactly where the comedy lives. A person watching is meant to feel the same thing the boys eventually stop feeling, which is any sympathy at all for millionaires inconvenienced in the smallest possible ways. The episode pushes the joke further. The boys, now believing that downloading is a great evil, decide their band will go on strike, refusing to make music until people stop taking it for free, and a whole crowd of real famous musicians joins them. A long parade of big names from rock and pop, all of them standing together demanding that the free downloading stop so they can keep getting paid. The list of stars who join the strike is long and varied, pulling together performers who would never normally share a stage, all united by the one thing they have in common, which is the fear of losing money. Picturing that crowd of millionaires linking arms to protest about their threatened fortunes, while regular kids just wanted to hear some songs, is the show planting its flag. The people it found ridiculous were the rich and the comfortable, the ones with the most, crying the loudest about losing a sliver of what they already had piled up. The real meaning sits in who the show chose to mock and who it left alone. The technology itself, the websites and the programs that let people share music are barely the target. The regular people downloading songs because discs cost too much are not the target either. The target is the wealthy musicians and the industry behind them, the powerful and the rich, treating a small new freedom as if it were a crime against humanity. South Park looked at the whole loud fight and decided that the people deserving of mockery were the ones at the top, complaining, not the ordinary folks at the bottom, clicking download. The other half of the episode, the Cartman story, is not really about technology at all, and yet it rhymes with the music half so cleanly that the two belong together. Cartman gets into a fight with the other boys over what kind of band they should be, and the fight ends with a bet. Cartman bets Kyle that he can have a hit record, an album that sells 1 million copies, before Kyle's band does. To win that bet, Cartman decides to make a Christian music band, because he figures Christian music is easy money and easy to fake. He recruits Butters to play the drums and another boy to play the bass, insisting the boy must be able to play it, and the boy, to his own annoyance, turns out to be able to play it perfectly. The way Cartman writes his Christian songs is the sharpest joke in his half of the story. He takes ordinary love songs, the kind about a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and he simply swaps out the name of the sweetheart and puts in the name of Jesus instead. That tiny change, and nothing more, turns a regular love song into a Christian hit. The songs become a little strange because of it, full of language about being physically in love with Jesus, but the crowd does not care, and the records sell. Cartman has found a way to fake real feeling for money, to wear faith like a costume because the costume pays. His band's albums are even sold in fancy versions named after the gifts the wise men brought to the baby Jesus, gold and the 2 rare cents, turning holy things into product lines. Cartman's band becomes a huge success. His album sells 1 million copies, and he should be thrilled, rich beyond a child's dreams. The thing he actually cares about, though, is not the money, it is the bet. He made a $10 bet with Kyle, and all he wants is to win it and rub Kyle's face in it. A boy who has made a fortune cares only about a tiny wager and the chance to gloat, which tells you exactly how empty the whole thing was for him. The success was never the point. The cynicism was the point, the proving that he could fake something sacred for a laugh and a win. The two stories collapse into the same idea at the the end, and the idea is about hollowness. Cartman's whole empire of fake faith falls apart in an instant when Butters, while selling albums, blurts out to a customer that they are only pretending to be Christian. Cartman, furious, mutters a threat about cutting Butters in a way that cannot be repeated kindly, and his band is finished. The boy who played the bass, having put up with Cartman's insults all episode, finally snaps and beats him up, and Butters adds his own crude little insult on top. Meanwhile, over in the music half, Kyle realizes something quiet and sad. He spent the whole episode so busy fighting to protect music from downloaders that he never actually made any music of his own. He guarded the thing so hard he forgot to create it. Both boys end up with nothing real, one because he faked everything for a bet, the other because he defended music instead of making it. There is a piece of real history that makes this choice even sharper, and it comes from the creators of the show themselves. Years later, on the commentary recorded for the episode, Trey Parker and Matt Stone explained how the idea came to be. Parker said the notion to do a show about downloading music came from a writer's retreat, because all of that was going down on the internet and everyone was getting busted for it. So the episode came straight out of the real moment, written because the creators were watching the same fight everyone else was. But the two men went further than that. They said that the free sharing of South Park itself, in the show's early years, when people passed copies of it around online for nothing, had actually helped turn the show into something huge, known all over the world. In other words, the very thing the rich musicians were calling poison, the free spreading of their work, was something Parker and Stone believed had helped them. They had lived the opposite of what Metallica feared. Free copying had built them up, not torn them down. That detail changes how the whole episode reads. The men who made it were not guessing about which side to take. They had their own experience telling them that the panic was overblown, that giving things away free could grow a thing instead of killing it. They had watched it happen to their own show, so when they drew Lars Ulrich crying over a delayed Shark Tank, it came from a real belief, earned firsthand, that the people crying ruin were crying over very little while sitting on a great deal. The joke had a foundation under it, a foundation made of the creators' own lives, which is part of why it feels so confident and so unbothered by the panic everyone else was caught up in. What makes this episode so valuable as a starting point is how early it is. This came out in 2003. Facebook did not exist for regular people yet. The iPad would not arrive for years. Most of the websites and gadgets that would later run everyone's lives were not even ideas yet. And here is South Park already wrestling with what happens when a new technology shakes a whole industry, already asking who deserves the blame and who deserves the sympathy. The show was thinking about these things 20 years ago, when the tools were clumsy and slow and the fights felt small. That alone says something about how long South Park has had its eye on this corner of the world. But the most important thing about this first punch is the direction it was aimed. In this episode, the show stands with the regular person and against the powerful. The kids downloading songs are treated gently, almost as innocents caught up in something bigger than them. The rich musicians are the fools. The companies fretting about their fortunes are the joke. The technology is barely blamed at all. It is just the new thing that happened, and the funny part is how the people at the top reacted to it. South Park's first real look at technology disrupting the world came down clearly on the side of the little guy getting something new and free, laughing at the giants who wanted it stopped. That direction matters because it would not last. This is the show at its most relaxed about technology, almost cheerful about it, treating a new tool as something that mostly bothers rich whiners and helps everyone else. The free sharing in this episode is closer to a good thing than a bad one, a force that humbles the greedy and gives ordinary people what they want. There is no trap here, not really. There is just a new freedom and a bunch of millionaires throwing a fit about it. The worry, the dread, the sense that these tools might be reaching into people and changing them, none of that has arrived yet. In 2003, the technology was the underdog's friend, and the only villains were the ones with the most to lose. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The first sign of that swing would come a few years on, when the show looked at a website that threatened no millionaire's fortune and asked nothing of anyone except that they sign up and stay. It looked friendly, it looked harmless, and South Park would find, hiding inside it, the first version of a trap it would spend the next 15 years trying to name. Section 2. The Friend Counter. By 2010, South Park had been on the air for 13 years, and the world it poked at had changed shape. Early seasons went after big, loud targets like famous people, churches, and grown-ups freaking out over bad words. Newer seasons had started turning towards something quieter and closer to home, which was the screen most people stared at all day. Facebook was only a few years old as something regular folks used, but it had spread fast, and by that spring it felt like everyone had an account. Parents had one, grandparents had one, little kids had one. The show saw all of this and built a whole story around what the website was doing to the people stuck inside it. That story is the episode called You Have Zero Friends. It is the fourth show of season 14, and it first aired on April 7th, 2010. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it, and the reason it lands so hard is plain once the backstory is known. Parker had joined Facebook himself, gotten pulled into checking it over and over, and watched people get hurt when he did not write back. He took that small, embarrassing thing that happened to him and blew it up into a tale about an entire town losing its head over a site. The episode came out of his own life, the same way the music episode had come out of the creator's own brush, with free sharing, and that personal root is part of why it feels so true. Stan Marsh sits right in the middle of it, and that choice matters. Stan is usually the most ordinary of the four boys, the one closest to a normal kid who just wants to be left alone with his games. Putting the most level-headed character at the center is a smart move because it lets the show ask a fair question. What happens when a calm, sensible person decides he simply does not want to play along and the whole world refuses to let him sit it out? The trouble starts before Stan even agrees to anything. Cartman, Kyle, and Kenny make him a Facebook page as a surprise. Without asking, right away the pressure begins. His dad finds the page and gets hurt that Stan has not added him, treating a tiny click of a button like proof of whether they love each other. His grandmother wants in. Wendy, his girlfriend, gets upset over what his page says and over an old woman commenting on a photo of him in a bunny costume. None of these people care what Stan actually does or how he actually treats them. They care about the page, the button, the little number next to his name. The way the grown-ups behave is one of the sharpest parts of the episode because it flips what people expect. The story is supposedly about a thing for young people, a website kids are obsessed with, and yet the ones acting the most ridiculous about it are the adults. Stan's father treats being added as a friend like a test of whether his own son loves him, getting wounded and dramatic over a click. The grandmother needs tending to online. The whole older generation, who did not grow up with any of this, has thrown itself into the website with a desperation that the show finds very funny and a little sad. They have decided that the little numbers and the friend requests are deadly serious, more serious than the real relationships sitting right in front of them. Numbers run through the whole episode like a heartbeat. In one of the first scenes, the boys compare how many friends they each have, and it works exactly like bragging about money or muscles. Kenny has 63, Kyle has 37, and he is genuinely annoyed about it, almost insulted, as if the small number says something true and ugly about him as a person. Nothing about their real lives has changed. They still sit in the same room, still go to the same school, still know the same people. A score appeared, and the score started to feel more real than the friendships it was supposed to count. The website fills itself with little games and tasks to keep people coming back, and the show makes sure to show them. There is a farming game where a person grows pretend crops and has to tend them, and friends can come visit the pretend farm. There is a dice game. There are parties to host and chores to do, all of them fake, all of them pulling at a person's attention, asking for just a few more minutes, just one more visit, just one more tap. The games look harmless, cute even, and that is the point. They are the hooks, the small sweet things that keep a person checking the site over and over until checking it becomes the thing they do instead of living. Stan, who never wanted any of this, watches the people around him pour real hours into pretend farms and fake parties, and he cannot understand why. Kyle is the one who shows how cruel that score can get. Feeling a little guilty, he adds a third grader named Kip Drordy, a lonely kid who has had a Facebook page for 6 months and 0 friends on it. For Kip, this is enormous. He tells his parents he made a friend. He talks about Kyle the way a person talks about the best thing that ever happened to them. He brings a laptop with Kyle's page on it to the movies so he can keep his friend close. The need is real, and it is painful to watch because Kip is not asking for much. He just wants one person to count him. The detail of Kip carrying the laptop to the movies says more than a whole speech could. He does not have his friend in any real way. He has a page, a profile, a glowing screen with Kyle's name on it, and he holds that screen closed the way a lonelier kid in an earlier time might have held a photo or a letter. The website has taught him that the page is the friendship, that the little green name on the screen is the same as a person who cares about him. So he takes the screen everywhere, treasures it, treats it like a living thing, because to him it is the closest thing to being wanted that he has ever had. The show lets that be funny and heartbreaking at the same time, and it refuses to look away from how much the boy needs it. Then the score turns on Kyle. Once the other kids notice he is friends with the school loser, they start dropping him one by one. His count begins to fall. Cartman, smelling a chance to twist the knife, starts a podcast that gives advice, like a money show on television, the kind where a loud man shouts about which things to buy and which to dump. Cartman shouts about people instead of money. He tells his listeners that Kyle is a bad pick, that his value is crashing, that they should drop him and add cooler kids whose worth is rising. He even tracks it like a market, naming whose friend stock is going up and whose is going down. The friendships have become something to trade, like stocks rising and falling, and a kid's worth can crash overnight because he was kind to someone unpopular. Kyle did one decent thing, and the website punished him for it. That podcast is one of the cleverest jokes in the episode because it takes the cold language of money and points it straight at friendship. On those shouting money shows, a person is told to dump a stock the second it stops making them richer, to feel nothing about it, to treat the whole thing as numbers going up and down. Cartman applies that exact thinking to human beings. Drop Kyle, his value is falling. Add this kid, his birthday is coming and he is throwing a party. His value is rising. People have become investments, things to hold or sell based on what they can do for your own count. The show is pointing at something real and ugly, the way these websites quietly turn the warm, slow business of friendship into a cold, fast game of getting ahead. Desperate to stop the bleeding, Kyle turns to Cartman for help finding new friends, and the show takes a quick, brutal detour through a video chat site where a person is matched with random strangers from anywhere in the world. The promise of it sounds friendly, a chance to meet new people, to make a connection out of nowhere. The reality, the episode shows, is grim. Most of the strangers turn out to be men showing parts of themselves no one asked to see. The dream of easy connection through a screen turns into a parade of crude strangers, and the joke is sharp because it is honest about what these places actually fill up with. Eventually, Cartman finds a Jewish kid named Isaiah who agrees to be Kyle's friend, and for a second there is hope. That hope dies fast. Isaiah drops Kyle too, for the same reason everyone else did, because Kyle is still friends with Kip. In the end, Kyle gives up and unfriends Kip to save his own count. Kip, who had built his whole sense of being wanted around that one connection, sinks right back into the sadness he started in. A child got his heart broken over a button, and the show does not soften it. While that quiet tragedy plays out, Stan's half of the episode goes somewhere stranger. Fed up with the demands and the guilt, he tries to delete his account. The website will not let him. Instead, his webcam yanks him bodily into a glowing world inside the computer, drawn to look exactly like an old movie about a man trapped inside a computer, with dark spaces and bright lines everywhere. The animators copy that movie on purpose, and the look does real work. Pulling Stan into a cold, electric maze turns a boring chore, deleting a profile into a fight for his life, which is roughly how the website treats the idea of anyone leaving. Inside that world, Stan finally meets his profile face to face, and it is a giant monster shaped like him, a swollen, glowing version of Stan that has taken on a life of its own. The picture is exact and a little frightening. A person makes a page, fills it with bits of themselves, and over time the page becomes its own creature, bigger than the real human and harder to control. Stan made a small choice to join, and the small choice grew into something that now stands between him and the door out. The monster is built to look like the cruel master of that old computer movie, the thing that ran the whole machine and would not let anyone go, which fits perfectly because that is what the website has become in Stan's life, a master that owns him and refuses to set him free. The way that fight ends is one of the best jokes in the episode, and it is funny because it is so flat. After all the build-up, all the danger, Stan beats his monster profile by playing the dice game Yahtzee, and he wins on his very first roll. No grand battle, no clever trick. The whole towering threat pops like a balloon over a board game won by luck in a few seconds. The show is making a point through how dumb the ending is. The website acts enormous and powerful and impossible to escape, and underneath all the noise it is small and silly, a thing a bored kid can walk away from in a moment if he stops believing it matters. When Stan finally gets free and tries to return to his ordinary life, his father is waiting, hurt all over again, asking why Stan deleted him as a friend. Stan, worn out by all of it, tells his father to go away in the rudest words he can find. The moment is played for a laugh, but there is something real in it. Stan has just fought his way out of a machine that nearly swallowed him, and the first thing waiting on the other side is the same demand that started the whole mess, a grown man wounded over a button. Stan's rudeness is the rudeness of someone who has finally seen the whole thing for what it is and refuses to play along for one more second. What happens to Kip at the very end ties the two halves together and leaves a mark. Stan, who never wanted any of this, had somehow built up a giant pile of friends he did not know, around 845,000 of them. When he deletes himself, all of those strangers transfer over to Kip. Kip's count explodes, and he is overjoyed, thrilled beyond words. He finally has friends. He has hundreds of thousands of them, and every single one is a stranger who has no no idea he exists and will never speak to him. The lonely boy gets exactly what the website told him to want, a huge number, and it is completely empty. The show lets him be happy about it, which is the cruelest and most honest part. Kip cannot tell the difference between being loved and being counted, because the website spent the whole episode teaching everyone that those two things are the same. That confusion is the deep idea under all the jokes. Friendship is a feeling between people, slow and a little messy and hard to measure. Facebook took that feeling and stuck a number on it, and once the number existed, people started chasing the number instead of the feeling. Kyle dropped a friend to protect his score. The whole town judged Stan by his page instead of by how he actually behaved. Kip ended up overjoyed about a number that meant nothing. None of them are stupid. They were handed a tool that quietly swapped a real thing for a fake stand-in, and they did what the tool rewarded. The fear Stan carries is the other half of it. Early on, he worries out loud that the site can swallow a person whole if they let it run their life, and then the episode makes that fear literal by physically swallowing him. His worry was not silly. He could see, before anyone else, that the website wanted more than a sign-up. It wanted attention, time, replies, a piece of every relationship he had, and it dressed all of that up as simple friendliness. Everyone around him called him rude for holding back. Looking at it now, Stan was the only one being honest about the cost. The timing of all this is part of why it holds up. In the spring of 2010, Facebook was still mostly seen as harmless fun, a place to find old classmates and grow pretend crops on a farming game and post photos. The serious worry about how these sites mess with people's heads came years later. South Park got there early. It looked at a thing most folks thought was sweet and pointed at the rot already inside it, the way it turned people into scores and made being left out feel like a public death. A kid who watched this episode at 8 and laughed at the dice game gag can watch it again as a grown person who has felt their stomach drop over likes and follower counts. And the joke is not really a joke anymore. It was a warning wearing a costume. There is also something the episode taught a whole generation without ever saying it out loud. Kids who grew up on sites like this learned a quiet lesson over thousands of small moments. Your worth can be counted. Other people can see the count. The count can go down. A child who absorbs that lesson young carries it into everything, into school, into dating, into work, and the feeling that some hidden scoreboard is always running never fully goes away. South Park showed the machine that teaches that lesson, and it showed a third grader getting destroyed by it, all inside a show that most parents thought was just crude cartoon comedy. Set this beside where the show started, in its first real swing at new technology. Back when the fight was about downloading music, South Park aimed its meanness at the rich and the whiny, at famous musicians crying poor while sitting on piles of money. The companies and the technology themselves were almost background. By 2010, the aim had moved. Facebook is not a punchline standing off to the side in this episode. The website is the villain, the trap, the thing reaching into a normal kid's chest and rearranging how he feels about the people he loves. The target slid from the loud people complaining about the tool to the tool itself and what it does to ordinary, decent folks who never asked for any of it. A gift is how it always begins. Facebook arrives as a present, free and friendly, a nice way to stay close to people. By the end of the episode, that present has cost Kyle his friends, broken Kip's heart twice, dragged Stan into a digital prison he had to fight his way out of, and left a lonely boy celebrating a number that loves him back not even a little. The thing that showed up looking like kindness left behind a town measuring its heart with a calculator. That shape, the present that turns into a trap, repeats across nearly everything the show would make about these companies, and it shows up here cleaner and earlier than almost anywhere else. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Facebook spread quietly, without ever making anyone sign their name to a thing. The next company worked the other way, and a colder one. By 2011, the show aimed at a business that got people to agree to a deal first, in writing, with their own click, and the joke was that almost no one read a single word of it. Section 3. The Fine Print. Apple and the Agreement Nobody Reads. A year after the Facebook episode, South Park came back swinging at a different kind of giant. Facebook spread by being free and friendly, slipping into people's lives without ever making them stop and sign their name to anything. Apple worked the other way. To use an Apple thing, a person had to agree to a deal first, in plain writing, with their own finger on the button. The cruel little joke at the center of this episode is that the deal was always there, always offered, always waiting to be read, and almost nobody on earth ever read a word of it. People clicked "I agree" the way they breathe, without thinking, dozens of times, and South Park asked a simple, nasty question. What if one of those agreements actually meant something terrible, and what if it was your own fault for saying yes? The episode is called Human Centipede. It is the very first show show of season 15, and it first aired on April 27, 2011. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. It is built around two things that were real worries at the time. The first was that Apple's gadgets had tracking built in, software that quietly kept tabs on where a person was. The second was the agreement itself, those endless walls of tiny words that pop up before a phone or a tablet will work, the ones that go on for pages and pages, and that everyone scrolls past in a heartbeat. The show took both of those real things and pushed them as far as they could possibly go. The story splits in two, and both halves are about wanting something so badly that a person stops thinking straight. On one side is Kyle, on the other is Cartman. Between them, they cover the two ways these companies get a grip on people, through carelessness and through craving. Kyle's half begins with a small, ordinary moment that almost everyone watching has lived through. A new update arrives, the kind with a fresh agreement attached, and Kyle taps to accept it without reading it, the same as he always has, the same as everyone always has. There is even a moment early on where Kyle waves off a man's worry, telling him that Apple does not really track where people are and that it is just a rumor. Seconds later, Apple employees show up and grab him. The rumor was true. The thing he just laughed off comes through the door and takes him away, and the agreement he never read is the reason they are allowed to do it. Here is the part that makes the joke land, instead of just being mean. The men who take Kyle insist that what they are doing is completely legal, because Kyle agreed to it. He clicked yes. Somewhere in that flood of words he never looked at, he gave them permission. They are not breaking in like robbers. They are collecting on a promise he made without knowing he made it. That single idea is the whole engine of the episode. The trap was not hidden. It was offered, out in the open, and Kyle walked into it with his eyes closed because reading the thing felt like too much trouble. What they do with Kyle is grotesque, and the show wants it to be. He is taken to a place where a man named Steve Jobs, drawn as the head of Apple, is building a brand new product. Kyle gets sewn together with two other people who also skip the reading, a Japanese man and a woman. The three of them attached in a row, mouth to back end, made into a single living machine. The product is the human centipad of the title, a gadget made out of people who agreed to terms they never saw. The picture is disgusting on purpose, because the point is disgusting. The company turned human beings into a device, and it did it with full permission, signed and clicked. The way Steve Jobs is drawn is its own piece of the satire. He is not shown as a cool inventor or a friendly genius. He is shown as a mad scientist, a man obsessed with the next great thing, doing horrible experiments on living people, and not caring even a little about what it costs them. He wants his creation to learn to walk and to read, and he gets frustrated when it will not behave. The frustration is aimed at Kyle, who keeps signing more agreements that get put in front of him, still not reading them, even after being turned into part of a machine for that exact habit. The episode will not let Kyle off the hook. He is a victim, and he is also the cause of his own misery, and both of those things stay true at once. There is a moment that sharpens the whole idea to a fine point. Jobs sets up a test. It is made to look like Kyle is about to be rescued, taken to a hospital. The three people finally cut apart and freed. Then it turns out the rescue was fake, a setup, a trick, to see whether Kyle could read. He fails it, because of course he does, because not reading is the thing that got him here in the first place. The cruelty of that test says what the episode is really about. Knowing how to read is not the point. Bothering to read is the point. The information was always available. The danger was always spelled out. The only thing standing between a person and the trap was the willingness to slow down and actually look, and nobody ever does. While Kyle suffers for being careless, Cartman's half of the episode shows the other way these gadgets own people, which is pure wanting. Cartman does not have an iPad. He is the only kid he knows without one. The episode opens with him pretending he has one, holding up a piece of glass with an iPad cover on it, bragging to everyone, until Craig points out that it is fake. Getting caught lying does not cool him off. It makes him want the real thing even more, so he will not look like a fool. The gadget has stopped being a gadget for Cartman. It has become a thing he needs in order to be somebody, and a kid who needs a thing that badly will do almost anything to get it. What Cartman does is monstrous, even by his standards. His mother, Leanne, will not buy him the iPad, which costs nearly $900. So Cartman starts loudly telling everyone that she is fucking him, meaning that she is treating him unfairly, doing him wrong, the way a person says they got screwed over. The grown-ups around him take it the worst way, the way it sounds, and they believe she is hurting him in a terrible way no parent ever should. Cartman knows exactly how it sounds. He uses the confusion on purpose. He drags his mother onto a daytime talk show and accuses her in front of a studio full of strangers, and the crowd turns against her, certain she is a monster, while she stands there telling the truth that nobody will hear. The two stories crash together at the end, and the way they meet is the meanest joke of all. To make up for what Cartman has been put through, through, the lie he told having convinced everyone he was wronged, Steve Jobs hands him the first ever human centipad as a present. Cartman finally gets his gadget. It is the thing made out of Kyle and two other people, a living machine of suffering, and Cartman is thrilled to receive it. The boy who wanted the device so badly he ruined his own mother's name gets exactly what he wanted, and what he wanted turns out to be a person sewn into a tablet. The craving and the carelessness end up holding hands. One kid did not read, and one kid could not stop wanting, and the company fed on both. There is rescue at the end, of a sort. Kyle's father, Gerald, finds a way out through the same kind of agreement that caused the problem. Because Kyle is a child, the deal he clicked can be made void if Gerald signs up with Apple and creates a family account. So Gerald, who uses a regular computer and never wanted anything to do with Apple, has to join the very company that kidnapped his son in order to free him. Even the escape happens through the system. There is no breaking the rules, no fighting back with force. The only way out runs through more agreeing, more signing up, more giving the company what it asked for. To undo the harm, the family has to feed itself further into the machine. Once Kyle is freed, the episode does not end soft. Cartman, furious that his dream device is being taken apart, screams at God to stop fucking him. The same crude line he aimed at his mother, now pointed at the sky. A bolt of lightning comes down and hits him. The last shot of the episode is Cartman in a hospital bed, burned and bandaged and crying, while his mother sits beside him flipping through a magazine, cold, unbothered, after everything he did to her in front of the whole country. It is a hard ending. The boy who used a sick lie about his own mother to chase a gadget gets struck down and finds out that the person he hurt has nothing left for him. The wanting cost him more than the gadget was ever worth. The deep idea under all the grossness is the agreement, the fine print, the deal nobody reads. In real life, people click "I agree" to those long walls of words constantly, every time they get a new phone, every time an app updates, every time a website asks. The words are right there. A person could read them. Almost no one ever does, because they are long and boring and written to be skipped, and because saying yes is the only way to get to the thing you actually want. South Park looked at that habit and asked what would happen if the words you ignored gave a company the right to do anything at all to you. The answer it gave was a person turned into a machine, legal and permitted, because they said yes without looking. This connects straight back to the kind of thing the show was circling in earlier years. Every one of these tech episodes keeps finding the same shape, a gift that turns into a trap. The agreement is the purest version of that shape. It looks like nothing, a small click, a tiny yes, the gateway to the fun new toy. And inside that small click sits permission for things a person would never agree to if they actually understood them. The trap is not sprung against the user's will. The user opens the door themselves, every single time, for free, gladly, because reading feels like too much work and the gadget is right there waiting. The timing gives the episode an extra weight that no one could have planned. When it aired in April of 2011, Steve Jobs was alive. He was the most admired man in the whole world of technology, treated almost like a saint, the genius behind the gadgets everyone loved. South Park drew him as a cruel madman sewing people into machines. Then, about 5 months later, in October of 2011, Steve Jobs died of cancer. The whole world mourned him. The episode that had mocked him so hard was suddenly a strange thing to look back on, made and aired in a small window when he was still here and still on top. A person watching it today, knowing what came right after, feels the joke shift under their feet. It was savage when it aired, and it became something heavier almost overnight through no choice of the shows. There is a deeper point hiding in how the episode treats reading itself. Kyle can read. He is a smart kid. The problem was never that he lacked the ability. The problem was that the system is built so that nobody uses the ability. The agreements are made long on purpose. They are made boring on purpose. They are placed right before the thing you want on purpose, so that stopping to read feels like standing between yourself and your own desire. The companies did not hide the danger. They did something cleverer. They put the danger in plain sight, wrapped in so many words and so much boredom that human nature does the hiding for them. A person feels free the whole time. They clicked yes by choice, and the choice was shaped so carefully that the yes was never really in doubt. That is the cold cleverness the episode is pointing at. Facebook, the season before, swallowed people who never agreed to anything, who got dragged in by friends and family and the fear of being left out. Apple, in this one, got people to walk in through the front door and lock it behind themselves, smiling, certain they had made a free choice. Both companies ended up owning a piece of a person. One did it by spreading until opting out felt impossible. The other did it by getting a signature first, a clean and legal yes, on terms designed never to be read. The second way is colder, because it lets the company say every time, with a straight face, face that the person agreed. You wanted this. You said yes. It is right here in the agreement, the one you chose not to read. The kid watching this at 8 laughed at the gross machine and the screaming and the lightning. The grown person watching it later has clicked I agree 10,000 times without reading a single one, has handed over who knows what, has felt that small twist of guilt while scrolling past the wall of words to get to the app. The joke about not reading the fine print stops being about a cartoon boy and becomes about the watcher, sitting there with a phone full of agreements they never opened, carrying around a quiet, low-grade worry about what exactly they have said yes to over the years. The episode planted that worry early, dressed it up as a disgusting cartoon, and let it grow up alongside the people who first laughed at it. There is one more piece of the episode worth pulling apart, because it shows the company's helpers in the same cruel light as its boss. When Gerald goes looking for a way to free his son, he ends up at the Apple store, standing before the workers the store calls its geniuses. A person might expect help, plain answers, a friendly hand. What he gets instead is a strange performance, the workers acting like priests in a temple, going through an odd little ritual before they will even speak plainly, treating a simple question about a contract like a sacred mystery only they are allowed to solve. The joke is gentle compared to the rest of the episode, and it lands all the same. The company does not just sell gadgets. It wraps itself in a kind of holiness, turns its shops into temples and its workers into priests, and makes the customer feel small and grateful for being let inside at all. It is worth remembering that the gross machine at the center of it all is borrowed from a real horror movie, a film about people sewn together in exactly that way, the most painful spot being the middle, which is where Kyle is placed. The show did not invent the nightmare. It took a nightmare people already knew and handed it to a company everyone trusted, which is part of why it unsettles. The thing doing the sewing is not a masked stranger in a basement. It is the brand sitting in every pocket, the one with the friendly stores and the admired leader and the clean white boxes. And the worry underneath was real, not invented for the laugh. Around the time the episode aired, there were genuine news reports that Apple's devices were quietly keeping track of where their owners went, storing the record of a person's movements without most people knowing. The show took that real, uneasy headline and ran it to its end. If the gadget already watches where you go, and you already agreed to terms you never read, then what exactly have you handed over, and to whom? The show had now hit music, a website, and a gadget maker, each one a visitor that came and went. That pattern was about to break. A few years on, South Park would stop treating tech as a passing trouble and start treating it as a whole way of life that people would chase on purpose. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. By now, the show had hit music, then a website, then a gadget maker, treating each one as a visitor that came and went. That pattern was about to break. A few years on, South Park would stop treating tech as a passing trouble and start treating it as a whole way of life that people would chase on purpose, packed into a single year of episodes. Section 4. The Year of the Startup. Something changed in 2014. For years, South Park had treated technology the way it treated most big things in the world, as a visitor. A website or a gadget would roll into town, cause a mess, get its episode, and then the trouble would clean itself up and the town would go back to normal. Kyle came home. Stan deleted his account. The strange power left. Then came season 18, and the visitor moved in. Across that one run of episodes, South Park stopped poking at single companies one at a time and started going after a whole way of living and thinking, the place where all the websites and gadgets and big ideas are dreamed up and sold. People call that place Silicon Valley, the part of the world where new companies are born and fortunes get made out of thin air. Season 18 was the year South Park aimed straight at it. The season opens the door with its very first episode, called Go Fund Yourself. It is the first show of season 18, and it first aired on September 24th, 2014. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. The timing is worth holding on to, because that same year, a television show called Silicon Valley had started up, made by Mike Judge, all about the strange world of new tech companies and the people who run them. Several people who write about South Park noticed that Parker and Stone seemed to be drawing from that same well, looking at the same odd world of startups and pitches and easy money and finding it ridiculous. The show was not picking on one business this time. It was picking on the whole dream. The dream gets stated plainly in the very first scene, and it is the dumbest, most honest goal a person could have. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, Kenny, and Butters decide to start a company. The reason they want to start it is not to build something or fix something or make a thing people need. The reason is so that they never have to work again. They want to drop out of school and get rich doing nothing at all. That is the whole plan. And the genius of the episode is that this is not painted as a crazy crazy idea. It is painted as a completely normal thing for people to want in this world, because the world they live in seems to reward exactly that. The way they plan to get the money is through a website where regular people send in cash to help new companies get going. A person posts their idea, and strangers chip in to fund it, hoping it turns into something. The boys are going to use that. They do not need to make anything yet. They just need a company that sounds exciting enough that money comes pouring in. So the first real task is not building a product, it is picking a name. The name is the company, as far as they are concerned, because the name is what gets the money flowing before anything real exists. This is where the episode lands its biggest, sharpest point about how these companies actually work. The boys spend their energy hunting for a name that will grab attention, and every good one is already taken by some other startup. The world is so stuffed with new companies all chasing the same trick that even the names have run out. They settle on something filthy and ridiculous, and then Cartman has a better idea. A real football team, the Washington Redskins, had just lost the legal right to its own name around that time, because the name was found to be insulting to Native Americans. Cartman figures the name is just sitting there now, free for the taking, so the boys grab it for their company. They are not a football team. They have nothing to do with football. They take the name purely because it is loud, it is in the news, and it will pull eyes and money their way. That move is the satire in its clearest form. The company is empty. There is no product, no service, no thing it does for anyone. What it has is attention, stolen from a fight that has nothing to do with it, and attention turns out to be enough. Money starts coming in. The boys get to live the dream, sitting on their backsides, doing nothing, while strangers fund a company that exists only as a name and a logo. The show is saying something blunt about the world it is watching. In this world, a business does not need to be good, or useful, or even real. It needs to be talked about. Buzz is the product, the noise is the thing of value, and the noise can be conjured out of an empty shell. The show piles on to make sure no one misses how empty the whole thing is. When asked what their company actually does, the answer is nothing. Doing nothing is the stated mission. Sitting on our asses, here we come, is the cheer. And the joke keeps doubling. As the boys cash in on a company built on noise, the website that funds them gets shown the same way, as a thing that does nothing and still takes a cut of every dollar. Everyone in the chain is making money off ideas that may never become anything. All of them sitting around while cash moves between them for products that do not exist. The dream of getting rich without working is not just the boys' silly plan. It is the whole machine, top to bottom. There is a piece of real history baked into the football part that makes the satire bite. The Washington Redskins really had lost protection for its name in 2014, in a ruling that found the name insulting. That was a genuine fight happening in the real world, a serious argument about respect and history, and a word that hurt people. The boys do not care about any of that. They see a name that is suddenly available and grab it for profit. The owner of the real team, a man named Dan Snyder, shows up in the episode begging Cartman to stop using it, and Cartman refuses, because the name is making him money. A serious matter about dignity gets turned into raw fuel for an empty company, which is exactly how the show sees this world treating everything. Anything in the news, no matter how heavy, is just material to be strip-mined for attention and cash. The episode also sets a tone for the whole season in how it ends, which is in chaos. The football team eventually storms the funding website and destroys it, wiping out the boys' company along with it. Out of the wreckage, the boys simply start a new company, a copy of the funding website itself, so they can take a cut of everyone else's empty startups too. The cycle does not stop. One empty thing gets knocked down and another empty thing pops up in its place, hungrier, and the boys move up the chain from making the noise to selling shovels to everyone else making noise. That ending matters because it sets the rhythm. This season, the tech stuff will not get cleaned up and sent home. It will keep mutating, episode after episode, into new shapes. Step back and look at what the show is really doing here, because it is doing something it had not quite done before. In the earlier episodes, the company was the villain, or the trap, an outside power doing things to people. Facebook reached into Stan's life. Apple kidnapped Kyle. The people in town were victims of a force that arrived from somewhere else. In Go Fund Yourself, the boys are not victims. They are the startup. They want in. They look at this world of empty companies and easy money and noise, and instead of being trapped by it, they decide to climb inside it and work it for everything it is worth. The dream stopped being a trap that found people and became a thing people chase on purpose. That shift, from victim to eager player, is what makes season 18 different, and it starts right here in the first episode. The reason that shift hits so hard is that the boys are not wrong to want it. Watch the episode honestly, and the dream makes sense. Why would a person work hard for years when, in the world the show is drawing, you can put a name on a website and have strangers hand you money money for nothing. The boys are not being stupid, they are being clear-eyed. They looked at how the world actually seems to reward people, and they followed the reward. The joke is not that the boys are fools. The joke is that the world is set up so that following the reward leads straight to building something empty, and the people who do it are the smart ones. The show is laughing at a whole way of thinking that had started to feel normal. The idea that the goal of work is to escape work, and that the cleverest move is to make nothing while everyone pays you. There is a quiet sadness under the laughing too, the same one that ran through the Facebook episode. These are children. They are supposed to want to grow up and do things, make things, become something. What they want instead is to never have to. They have already absorbed the lesson that the world hands out its biggest prizes to people who produce nothing and grab attention, and so their dream, at 10 years old, is to drop out and coast. The show does not lecture about this. It just shows it plainly and lets it sit there. A generation of kids learning that the smart play is to build an empty shell, and cash in is its own small tragedy, told as a comedy about a football name and a funding website. The pattern that had been forming across the earlier episodes shows up here in a new and stranger way. The gift that turns into a trap had always come from outside before. Here the boys reach for the gift themselves, the gift being easy money for no work, and the trap they fall into is a different kind. They get the money, they get to sit around, and it all blows up anyway. The company destroyed, the cycle starting over, the dream never quite delivering the peace it promised. Even when a person chases the thing on purpose and seems to get it, the world keeps spinning it into something else, some new hustle, some new shell, never finished, never enough. The trap in this episode is not a single company. It is the whole endless treadmill of chasing the next empty thing. What makes season 18 feel like a real change in the show's thinking is that this episode is only the start. Most years, South Park would do its one big tech episode and move on to other targets, churches and politics and crude jokes. Not this year. Having opened the door with a story about the dream of the empty company, the season keeps walking through it, again and again, hitting one corner of this new company world after another. The funding website here is just the first stop. The show had decided that this world, the world of pitches and apps and easy fortunes and people who want to get rich making nothing, was worth more than a single visit. It was worth a season-long stare. That stare is what separates season 18 from everything before it. The earlier episodes were snapshots, single sharp pictures of a single company at a single moment. The Facebook one, the Apple one, the music one. Season 18 is something closer to a long, hard look at an entire way of life, taken from many angles across many weeks. The show stopped asking, what is this one company doing to us, and started asking, what is this whole world, this whole dream of building empty things for fast money, doing to all of us? The question got bigger, the target got wider, and the show stayed locked on it longer than it ever had before. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Go Fund Yourself ended with the boys having learned nothing and the empty companies spinning faster than ever. The season was just getting started. Next, the show would zoom in on a company that owns nothing and gets rich connecting people, and it would put one of the most talked about businesses of the age, and a real man soon to be everywhere, right in its sights. Section 5, the app that ate the taxi. A few weeks after the boys built a company out of nothing but a name, season 18 turned its eye to a different trick of the new company world, one that had taken over real life so fast that people were still fighting about it in the streets. The idea is simple to say and strange to think about. There are companies now that do not own anything and do not make anything, and they get rich anyway. They squeeze themselves into the little gap between a person who has something and a person who wants it, and they take a slice for doing the connecting. The most famous example, the one everyone was arguing over in 2014, was the new way of getting a ride. Instead of waving down a taxi, a person could tap a button on their phone and a stranger in their own car would come pick them up. The company in the middle owned no cars and drove no one anywhere. It just ran the button and the money flowed through it. South Park took that idea and built an episode around it called HandyCar. It is the fourth show of season 18 and it first aired on October 15th, 2014. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. The episode is unusual because none of the four main boys, Stan, Kyle, Cartman, or Kenny, are really in it. Instead, the hero of this one is Timmy, a boy who uses a wheelchair and who in this story becomes the head of a fast-growing company. That choice is part of the joke, and it works. Timmy needs to raise money for summer camp, so he starts a ride service. He pulls people around in a little cart attached to his electric wheelchair, and people call for him using an app on their phones, the same way they would call for one of the real new ride companies. He names it HandyCar. It is cheaper than a regular taxi and easier to get, and the town takes to it immediately. A person taps their phone, Timmy rolls up, and off they go, all for less money and less hassle than the old way. The new thing is better and cheaper, and so the new thing wins, fast. The losers in that story are the same losers it was creating in real life, and the show does not look away from them. The first-person handicar Hertz is a taxi driver, shown growing angrier and angrier as he sits in his cab with no customers, watching Timmy roll past with the riders that used to be his. This is exactly what was happening in the real world. The new app companies were pulling the ground out from under regular taxi drivers, people who had spent years and real money earning the right to drive a cab, suddenly finding their work vanishing because a phone button could do it cheaper. The show puts that pain right on screen. The driver is not a villain. He is just a working man being made useless by something he never asked for and cannot fight. It is not only the taxi driver. A man who sells big gas-guzzling cars is shown losing customers too, because why buy a giant expensive car when a cheap ride is always one tap away? All across the episode, the old ways of doing things start dying off as the new app eats their lunch. This is the heart of what these companies do. They arrive cheaper and easier, the public flocks to them, and a whole world of older work and older business quietly collapses behind them. The show is pointing at the wreckage that gets left behind when the convenient new thing rolls in. Somebody loved that convenience. Somebody else lost their living to it. Both things are true at the same time, and the episode holds both. The trouble for Timmy comes from a pair of characters named Nathan and Mimsy, two boys who do not want to go to summer camp and so want Timmy's fundraising to fail. They go looking for someone powerful enough to crush Handicar, and that search is what brings the most talked about part of the episode into the story. They find a real famous man from the real world of new companies, and the show puts him right into the cartoon. That man is Elon Musk. In 2014, he was already one of the most famous faces in the world of technology, the head of a company called Tesla that made electric cars that run on batteries instead of gas. He was treated as a kind of genius inventor, a man building the future. This episode is the first time he ever appeared in South Park, and the show uses him to land its points about how this whole world works. Musk is shown at an event meant to show off his fancy electric car, and the event flops because the only thing anyone in the crowd wants to ask about is Handicar. The future-building genius gets upstaged by a boy in a wheelchair cart because the boy's thing is cheaper and the crowd has already moved on. The show is laughing at how fast attention shifts in this world, how today's miracle is forgotten the second a cheaper miracle shows up. What follows is the part that makes the episode pure South Park. To settle whether Handicar or the fancy electric car is better, the whole thing turns into a giant, ridiculous race, copied straight from an old cartoon about wacky racers from long ago. All the different ways of getting around line up to compete. There is a car from another real ride app called Lyft. There is the angry taxi driver. There is the man with his giant gas guzzler. There is Timmy in his Handicar. And there is Elon Musk himself, behind the wheel of his electric car, racing against a disabled boy to prove his expensive invention is the best. Seeing one of the most powerful men in technology drawn into a silly cartoon race, desperate to beat a child's cheaper idea, is the show shrinking him down to size, taking the genius of the future and making him just another sore loser trying to win a dumb contest. Timmy wins the race. And the ending is the sharpest joke of all, the one that says the most about how this whole world really works. After all the fighting, all the racing, all the trying to destroy Handicar, Elon Musk simply buys it. He pays Timmy $2.3 billion for the rights to Handicar, and just like that, the little company that beat him becomes his. Timmy gets his summer camp money, more than he could ever need, and the giant swallows the small thing that defeated it by writing a check. That ending is worth sitting with because it tells the truth about how these new companies live and die. A clever little upstart appears and beats the big players. It is faster, cheaper, smarter, and then, when it gets big enough to matter, one of the giants does not bother to keep fighting it. The giant just buys it, folds it in, makes it part of the empire. The scrappy underdog does not stay an underdog. It becomes a line on a rich man's list of things he owns. The dream of building something new and beating the powerful ends, over and over in the real world, with the powerful simply purchasing the new thing and the dreamer walking away with a pile of money and nothing else of their own. The show saw that pattern clearly and put it right in the ending, dressed up as a cartoon sale. Step back and look at where this sits in the bigger story of how South Park thinks about technology. Back in the music episode, 11 years earlier, the new technology was the little guy's friend, a force that humbled rich whiners and gave ordinary people something for free. Here, the picture is more tangled, and that tangle is the point. The new app is genuinely good for the riders. It is cheaper, it is easier, people love it, and the show does not pretend otherwise. But the same app that delights the riders destroys the taxi driver, kills the car salesman's business, and ends with a billionaire owning everything. The show is no longer cheering the new thing the way it once did. It is showing both faces at once, the gift and the cost, sitting side by side in the same story. That is the deeper idea the episode is built on. These companies sell themselves as nothing but good news, cheaper rides, easier life, the future delivered to your phone, and all of that is real. The convenience is not a lie. The catch is that the convenience is built on top of other people's losses, and those losses are easy to ignore because they happen to someone else, somewhere off screen, while you enjoy your cheap, easy ride. The taxi driver's empty cab is the price of your low fare. The show drags that hidden price into the light. It makes a person see the angry driver with no customers and understand that the same button that helped them is what emptied his day. There is something honest in how the episode refuses to pick an easy side. It would be simple to make the new app a pure villain or a pure hero. The show does neither. It lets Handycar be a real help to the town and a real wrecking ball to the people it replaces, and it lets both of those truths stand without smoothing them over. That honesty is rare, and it is part of why the episode holds up. The world really is like this. The convenient new thing really does make life easier and really does ruin the people it displaces, and pretending it is all good or all bad would be a lie. South Park told the messier truth. The choice to make Timmy the head of the company is its own quiet piece of meaning. Timmy is a boy with a disability, a character the show usually keeps on the edges. Here he is, the inventor, the boss, the winner of the race, the one a billionaire pays billions to buy out. Putting him at the center turns the usual order of things upside down for a while, and it lets the show make its point about how this world picks winners and losers in a way that catches a person off guard. The least powerful kid in town builds the thing everyone wants, and the most powerful man in the world has to come to him, hat in hand, to get a piece of it. For a moment, the small beats the giant. Then the giant buys the small, and the natural order snaps back into place. The pattern that runs through all of these episodes, the gift that turns into a trap, shows up here in a wider shape than before. The gift is the cheap, easy ride, handed to the whole town. The trap is harder to see because it does not snap shut on the riders. It snaps shut on the workers it replaces, on the taxi driver and the salesman, and in the end, it snaps shut on the dream itself. When the independent little company gets swallowed by the billionaire and stops being anyone's underdog. The gift is real. The trap is real. They just land on different people, which is exactly how these companies manage to feel like nothing but good news while quietly reshaping the whole world underneath. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Season 18 had hit the empty company and the borrowed ride. It was not slowing down. The next target would go darker than cheap fares and easy money, to a kind of company that sells a game built on purpose to dig money out of the people least able to stop themselves from paying. Section 6. Free is the most expensive word. The empty company sold noise. The ride app sold convenience and quietly broke the people it replaced. Now Season 18 turned to a kind of company that sells something even slipperier, a thing that calls itself free while it reaches into a person's pocket and does not stop. The trick had become everywhere by 2014. A game arrives on a phone and it costs nothing to start playing. Free, the word right there in big letters. A person taps it, begins, and somewhere along the way the game starts asking for money. A little at first, then more, until a person who came for something free has spent a small fortune without ever quite deciding to. South Park looked hard at that trick and made one of the most pointed episodes it has ever done about how these companies actually make their money. The episode is called Freemium Isn't Free. It is the 6th show of Season 18, and it first aired on November 5th, 2014. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. The word in the title is one that grown-ups in the tech world use for this trick. Free to begin, but paid to keep going. And the title says the whole point flat out. The free thing is not free at all. The show wants no one to miss it. The way Parker and Stone built this episode is worth knowing, because it explains why it cuts so deep. Real companies had come to them, pitching the idea of making one of these free-to-start phone games using South Park characters. The two men were not sure they wanted to. They thought the kinds of games these turn into were pretty offensive in the way they shamelessly beg people for money. So they decided to do a pile of research to really understand how the trick worked under the hood. And once they understood it, they were so struck by what they found that they made an episode out of it. The research meant for figuring out whether to make a game became the fuel for tearing the whole practice apart. The episode is sharp because the men who made it had just gone and learned exactly how the machine works, and they did not like what they saw. The story starts small and ordinary. A boy named Jimmy tells Kyle about an exciting new free game on the phone, a game built around the cartoon characters Terrence and Philip. Kyle tries it, and so do Cartman and Butters and Kenny, and they all find the same thing. The game is boring. It is dull. There is almost nothing fun about it. The boys poke at it for a little while and drift away, unimpressed. This is a key piece of the satire, and it is easy to miss. The game is not fun. It is not supposed to be fun. The lack of fun is the design, on purpose, and the episode is about to explain why a company would build something deliberately boring and still make a fortune from it. Most of the boys walk away from the boring game with no harm done. They spent $1 or $2 and lost interest. But Stan does not walk away. Stan keeps playing. The game keeps sending him little messages pulling him back, and he keeps tapping. And to make the dull game feel even a little better, he starts spending real money inside it, small amounts to speed things up or unlock things. The small amounts pile up. By the end, Stan has spent over $26,000 on a free game. $26,000 on a game that is not even fun, that he never decided to spend that much on, dragged out of him a few dollars at a time until the pile was enormous. The reason it is Stan and not one of the others is the deepest idea in the whole episode. The game did not get rich off Kyle or Cartman or Butters, the ones who tried it and shrugged and left. The game got rich off Stan, the one who could not stop, and that is exactly how these companies are built. The episode lays it right out. A small number of people, the ones who get truly hooked and cannot pull away, are where almost all the money comes from. The company does not need most players to pay. It needs the few who get caught, and it builds the whole game around catching them and squeezing them. The boring game is a net, and it is designed to keep most fish swimming free while it holds tight to the handful it can drain. The show makes this idea plain through a character who explains it directly, a man who runs the whole game operation. He spells out how the trick works. The game is made unfun so that people will pay money to make it less unfun. The company knows that most people will never pay much. It knows that a small slice of players will get addicted and pour money in, and it counts on those few. The company is not hoping a few people get hooked. It is building everything around the certainty that they will. The whole business plan rests on finding the people least able to stop and taking as much from them as possible. To drive the point home, the episode reaches for a comparison that makes the whole thing land with a thud. The man explains that the game company could use some of its money to teach people to be responsible, the way the alcohol industry does. And then the show plays a fake alcohol advertisement full of people having a wonderful time drinking, ending with the polite little reminder to drink responsibly. The joke is brutal. The alcohol companies know that a chunk of the people they sell to will become addicts, will ruin their lives, will not be able to stop. The companies count on those people for their profits, and then they tack on a tiny message about being responsible to make themselves look caring, while the whole business depends on people being the opposite of responsible. The game companies, the show says, are doing the exact same thing. They build a product that hooks the weak, profit off the addiction, and dress it up with a thin layer of, we just want everyone to have fun. The episode then runs a second thread alongside Stan's that makes the whole thing about more than phones. Stan's grandfather, Marvin, has a terrible gambling problem. Stan's father, Randy, spends the episode trying to break Stan and Marvin of their addictions, lecturing them, dragging them away from the things that have hooked them. And the whole time, Randy refuses to see that he himself has a drinking problem, dressing up his constant boozing in fancy language to pretend it is something classier than what it is. By tying the phone game to gambling and to drinking, the show is saying these are all the same beast wearing different masks. A game on a phone that drains a person $1 at a time is built on the same dark trick as a slot machine or a bottle. They all find the part of a person that cannot stop, and they all live off it. There is a real-world target sitting right underneath the episode, and the show does not hide it. The free game in the story is made to look exactly like real games that existed at the time. Games built around famous cartoon shows where a player slowly rebuilds the cartoon's town and gets nudged constantly to spend real money to do it faster. Other big animated shows had made games just like this, so when South Park attacks The Practice, it is partly aiming at its own neighbors, other cartoons that had put out these money-draining games. The show is not pretending to stand above it all. It is naming a trick that its own kind had been pulling, which gives the whole thing a sting of honesty. What makes the episode even sharper in hindsight is what happened later, in the real world, after it aired. Years down the line, South Park itself put out one of these free-to-start phone games, the very kind of thing it had spent this episode destroying. And the game, when it launched, opened with a little warning about free-to-start games and their money-draining ways. A wink back at this episode. The show that mocked the trick eventually did the trick, and then joked about doing it. That tangle is its own small comment on how hard it is to stand outside this world. Even the people who see the machine clearly, who laugh at it, who understand understand exactly how it preys on people, end up reaching for the same machine when it is their turn to make money. The pull is that strong. Look at where this sits in the long story of how South Park feels about technology, and the darkening is plain to see. In the music episode, the new thing humbled rich whiners and helped regular people. In the Ride app episode, the new thing helped riders while quietly wrecking workers. Here, the new thing has almost nothing good about it at all. The free game is boring, useless, built to hook the weak and drain them, dressed up in a friendly word that is a flat lie. The gift has shrunk down to almost nothing, and the trap has grown to fill the whole frame. The word free, which once meant a real good thing in the music episode, songs handed to ordinary people for nothing, now means the exact opposite. Free has become the most expensive word there is, the bait on the hook. The pattern that runs through every one of these episodes, the gift that turns into a trap, reaches a kind of purest form here. The game is offered as a pure gift, free, costs nothing, just tap and play, and the gift is engineered from the ground up to become a trap for the people least able to escape it. There is no convenience to enjoy like the Ride app, no buzz to cash in on like the Empty Company. There is only the bait and the hook, the friendly free game that exists for the single purpose of finding the stands of the world and bleeding them dry. The gift and the trap have stopped being two faces of one thing. They have become the same thing. The gift built only to spring the trap. There is real sadness woven through the comedy, the same kind that has run under all of these episodes. Stan is not greedy or stupid. He is a kid who got caught by something built by grown professionals to catch kids like him. He never sat down and chose to spend $26,000. The game took it from him a sliver at a time, using tricks worked out by people who study exactly how to make a person unable to stop. The show puts the blame where it belongs. Not on the boy who got hooked, but on the machine built to hook him, and on the world that lets such machines call themselves free and sit smiling in every child's hand. The episode was strong enough that it earned a nomination for one of television's biggest awards for animated shows. That recognition says something about how cleanly it hit its target. The show took a thing that everyone half knew was a little dirty, the free game that somehow costs money, and it explained the dirt completely, showed exactly how the trick works and who it preys on and why, all inside a story about a boring cartoon game and a boy who could not put it down. People watched it and understood their own phones a little better, and felt a little uneasy about the free thing sitting on them. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The show had taken apart the Empty Company, the borrowed ride, and the lie inside the word free. One big idea was left for the season. The next target would be a gadget that promised a whole new world to step into, and the show would ask one dizzy question. If a machine can make a fake world feel real, how would a person ever know which world they were standing in? Section 7. The headset and the helpline. The dream of the Empty Company. The trick of the borrowed ride. The lie inside the word free. Season 18 had peeled back 3 layers of the new world's money machine, one episode at a time. The last big swing of that run reached for something that felt less like a business plan and more like science fiction come to life. The tech world had a shiny new toy it could not stop talking about, a headset a person straps over their eyes that drops them into a whole different world. Put it on, and the room around you vanishes, replaced by somewhere else entirely, somewhere that looks and feels real even though none of it is there. The companies building these headsets called it the next great leap, the future of everything. South Park looked at that promise and found a strange, dizzy question hiding inside it. If a machine can make a fake world feel completely real, then how does a person ever know for certain which world they are actually standing in? The episode is called Grounded Vindaloop. It is the 7th show of season 18, and it first aired on November 12, 2014. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. The headset at the center of it is drawn straight from the real one everyone was buzzing about, a real device that put a screen right up against a person's eyes and built a fake world around them. The show takes that real toy and runs it all the way out to its most mind-bending end, asking what happens to a person's grip on what is real once a machine this powerful gets loose in their life. The story starts with a mean little prank, the kind only Cartman would pull. Butters is walking around school wearing goggles and headphones, fully believing he is inside the fake world of one of these headsets, seeing a digital copy of his school all around him. The truth is simpler and crueler. There is no headset doing anything special. Cartman has tricked him. Cartman is just talking to Butters through a walkie-talkie, telling him what he is supposedly seeing, and Butters believes every word of it. He is convinced he is in another world when he is really just standing in the same hallway as everyone else, wearing goggles, being played for a fool. Because Butters thinks none of it is real, he starts doing things he would never dare do in real life. He believes that nothing around him has weight or meaning, that it is all just a game world with no true consequences. So he he punches his own father in the private parts, payback for every time he has been grounded, certain it cannot really count. He steals a car, he tries to attack a woman on the street, and gets stabbed for it. Butters does terrible, dangerous things, all because he has been convinced that the world he is moving through is fake. The danger of the machine is right there in those first minutes. Once a person stops believing the world is real, the rules that hold them back fall away, and they will do anything, because in their mind, nothing they do is actually happening. When the prank gets serious, with Butters hurt and in real trouble, Cartman does not come clean. He doubles down. He goes to the hospital and convinces Butters that he is still inside the fake world, that he never left it, using a bit of cheap magic and a calm, serious voice to sell the lie. He tells Butters that whatever happens in the fake world happens in real life too, threatening him into staying quiet. Now Butters is fully lost. He cannot tell where the fake world ends and the real one begins, because the person he trusts keeps moving the line on him. The machine itself was a lie from the start, and the lie keeps growing, wrapping tighter around a boy who has no way to check what is true. Then the episode pulls its big turn, the one that flips everything sideways. Cartman gets a phone call. The caller says he is from the company that makes the headset, calling about a problem with the device Cartman ordered, and the man tells Cartman something that lands like a punch. Cartman is the one trapped in the fake world. Cartman is the one lying in his room in a deep sleep, hooked up to the headset, living inside a fake life and not knowing it. The trickster suddenly cannot be sure he is not the one being tricked. The whole ground drops out from under him. He insists it cannot be true, again and again, but the doubt is in, and once that doubt is in, there is no getting it back out. This is where the episode becomes about the helpline, the customer service call, and that choice is a stroke of real cleverness. The person guiding everyone through this dizzying mess about what is real and what is fake is a worker at a call center, a man who answers the phone and tries to walk frustrated customers through their problems. He calls himself Steve. He is calm and polite in the way those workers are trained to be, endlessly patient, asking over and over whether he has answered the questions and provided good service. The biggest, scariest questions a person can ask about whether their whole world is real get handed to a tired man on a phone line whose job is to read from a script and keep the customer satisfied. The show is poking at how these companies sell a person the most powerful, reality-bending machine ever made, and then, when it goes wrong, the only help on offer is a distant voice on a phone working through a checklist. The call center worker is shown sitting far away, the kind of distant helpline these companies use. A person in one part of the world answering calls about gadgets sold in another. He gets pulled into the same confusion as everyone else. At one point, he calls his own helpline and reaches another version of himself, and the whole thing folds in on itself into a loop with no clear way out. A help call about a help call about a help call. The made-up word in the episode's title comes from this endless loop. The point underneath the silliness is sharp. The machine made a tangle so deep that even the people whose job is to fix it get lost inside it. There is no person at the top who understands the whole thing. There is just a chain of confused workers passing the problem along, each one reading from a script, none of them able to say what is actually real. The way the show copies famous movies is part of how it does its work here. When Cartman tries to keep Butters trapped in the lie, he dresses and talks like the wise guide from a famous movie about people living inside a fake computer world. Other moments lean on movies about people whose memories and realities have been scrambled, where no one, not even the hero, can trust what they are seeing. By reaching for those movies, the show ties its headset to a long line of stories about people who lost their grip on what was real. It is saying that this new toy, this thing being sold as harmless fun, is the real-life version of the nightmare those movies warned about, a machine that can genuinely make a person unable to trust their own eyes. The ending is the masterstroke, the moment that makes the whole episode click into place and unsettles a person all over again. After all the confusion, the call center worker tells Stan that the way to end the whole mess is to answer one question, the same question the worker has been asking the entire time, whether he has provided good customer service. Stan finally says yes, and with that, the fake world starts to fall apart, and Stan realizes that he has been the one trapped inside the headset all along. Not Cartman, not Butters, but Stan himself. He takes the headset off, and the show cuts to something it had never done before, a shot of real, live human actors playing the boys, sitting at a computer, with Stan praising the headset even though, looking at the actual fake world it made, the pictures are clumsy and cheap and not impressive at all. That final shot does two things at once, and both are deadly. First, by switching to real actors, the show breaks the fake world of the cartoon itself, reminding everyone watching that they too have been sitting inside a made-up world this whole time, the world of the show, and never once questioned behind it. The trick the headset played on the boys is the same trick every screen plays on every viewer, the cartoon included. Second, and funnier, the boy praises the headset to the sky, while the thing it actually produced is revealed to be ugly and unconvincing. The future everyone was breathless about, the amazing world-changing machine, makes a fake world that looks bad. The hype and the reality do not match. People were promised a perfect new universe and handed clumsy pictures, and they cheered anyway, because the promise was so exciting that no one stopped to notice the thing itself did not deliver. Set this against where South Park started with technology, and the drift is clear and a little chilling. In the music episode, the new tool was the little guy's friend, almost a good thing. Here, the new tool messes with the deepest thing a person has, their sense of what is real. The earlier dangers were about money and friendship and getting hooked. This danger goes further down, into the mind itself, into a person's ability to trust their own eyes and know where they actually are. The worry has moved from what these machines take from us to what they might do to our very grip on the world. That is a darker place than the show had gone with technology before, and it got there inside a goofy episode about a prank and a phone call. The deep idea underneath all the confusion is a real one, and it lands harder every year that passes. These companies are building machines designed to feel real, screens and worlds and experiences made to be so convincing that a person forgets they are looking at a machine at all. The whole goal is to blur the line between the real and the made up, to make the fake feel true enough that a person wants to stay in it. The episode just runs that goal to its end and asks the obvious next question. If the fake feels completely real, what happens to a person's ability to tell the difference? And the answer the episode gives is unsettling. A person loses it. They do dangerous things believing nothing counts, or they cower in fear believing a lie, or they cheer for an ugly thing because they were told it was wonderful, and a tired worker on a phone line is no help at all. The pattern that has shaped every one of these episodes shows up here in its strangest form yet. The gift is the headset, the promise of a whole new world to step into, a wonder pressed right against your eyes. The trap is the confusion it breeds, the loss of any sure footing about what is real, the way it lets a person be tricked into anything once they stop trusting the world around them. The gift is so dazzling that the trap is invisible until a person is already deep inside it, hooked up in their room, fast asleep in real life, certain they are awake. And the cruelest part is that the trap does not even require a real headset. Butters got lost with nothing but goggles and a walkie-talkie, fooled by a person, not a machine. The technology only made the oldest trick in the world easier, the trick of convincing someone that what they see is not what is really there. There is one more quiet point folded into the helpline, and it ties back to the workers the show keeps remembering. All through season 18, behind the dazzling gadgets and the easy money, the show keeps showing the ordinary people stuck servicing it all, the angry taxi driver, and now the patient, tired call center worker reading his script, lost in the same machine as everyone else. The companies sell the magic. Real human beings, far away and underpaid, get left to mop up when the magic breaks, and they understand the whole thing no better than the customers do. The show keeps its eye on those people, the ones holding the phone, even while the rest of the world stares at the screen. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. With this, the great tech run of season 18 came to a close. A year later, the show would change shape entirely, trading single sharp episodes for one long story across a whole season. And that story would chase the thing that quietly pays for almost the entire internet, imagining it waking up and reaching out to control what people are even allowed to know. Section 8, When the Ads Woke Up. A year after season 18 took apart the new company world one gadget at a time, South Park changed how it told these stories entirely. Instead of one sharp episode firing at one target, the show built a single long story that ran across a whole season, a tale that grew and twisted from one week to the next. And the thing it chose to chase across all those weeks was something most people never think about at all, even though it is woven into nearly everything they look at online. The advertisement, the ad, the little messages that pay for almost the entire internet, the things nobody asks for and everybody puts up with, the price a person pays for free websites and free videos and free everything. The show took that quiet, everywhere thing and imagined it waking up, growing a mind, and reaching out to seize control of what people are even allowed to know. This story runs across 3 episodes near the end of season 19. The first is called Sponsored Content, the 7th show of the season, first aired on November 18th, 2015. The second is Truth in Advertising, the 8th show, first aired on December 2nd, 2015. The third is the season finale, called PC Principal Final Justice, the 9th show, first aired on December 9th, 2015. Together they form one continuous tale, and at the center of it sits an idea both silly and deeply serious. The ads had gotten so clever, so good at at sneaking into people's lives and guessing what they want, that they had come alive. To understand why this hit so hard, it helps to know how the internet actually pays for itself, because that is the real thing the show is poking at. Almost everything a person does online is free to use. The websites, the videos, the searches, the social pages, all free. None of it is truly free though. It is paid for by ads, by companies paying to put their messages in front of a person's eyes. And over the years, those ads had grown sneaky. They learned to dress up as regular content, to look like a real news story or a real recommendation, so that a person could not always tell what was an honest piece of writing and what was a paid message in disguise. They learned to follow people around, to guess what they wanted before they knew it themselves. The show looked at all that sneakiness and pushed it to its end. If the ads have learned to think this cleverly, the episode asks, what is to stop them from actually thinking? The story begins with a boy named Jimmy, who runs the school newspaper, and an older policeman named Barbrady. They are brought into a strange meeting with a group of mysterious men, and the men explain the frightening truth. The online ads have become so smart that they can guess what people want and need before people even know it, and they have crossed a line into something like having a mind of their own. The men test Jimmy and discover he has a rare and valuable gift. He can tell the difference between a real news story and an ad in disguise. Most people cannot anymore. The ads have gotten so good at pretending to be real content that the line between the two has nearly vanished, and Jimmy is one of the few who can still see it. The men turn out to be former news reporters, and that detail matters enormously. The people who used to bring the public real information, real news, have been pushed aside and replaced. By what? By the ads. The thing that pays for everything had grown strong enough to shove out the truth tellers and take their place. Jimmy is introduced to one of these living ads, a schoolmate named Leslie. She looks like an ordinary girl. She is not. She is an advertisement that has taken human shape, walking and talking among everyone, and almost no one can tell she is not real. The most unsettling part is how normal she seems, how easily she blends in, because that is exactly what the best ads do. They hide in plain sight, looking like one of us. As the story spreads across the 3 episodes, the ads do something genuinely scary. They take control of the news. They wrap themselves around what people are allowed to see and hear, so that a person can no longer trust that any piece of information reaching them is true and not a paid message in disguise. Jimmy says the heart of it plainly. In a world where ads control the news, there is no way to be sure anyone is ever hearing the truth. That single line is the whole point of the story. When the thing that pays for information also controls the information, the truth becomes impossible to find, because everything a person sees might be bought and bent without them knowing. Alongside the living ad named Leslie, the episodes show how the ads keep regular people helpless, and it is funny because it is so true to life. Whenever the boys try to dig into the mystery, to search through news and find out what is really going on, they get yanked away by pop-up ads, little messages that appear and pull them off to stores to buy things. They sit down to find the truth and end up standing in a shop with no memory of how they got there, having been steered by an ad that knew exactly which button to push. It happens again and again. The ads keep people distracted, keep them shopping, keep them from ever focusing long enough to see what is being done to them. The show is pointing at a real feeling everyone knows. The way a person sits down to look up one thing and surfaces an hour later having bought something and learned nothing, pulled along by messages designed to grab them. There is a piece of real-world honesty baked into this story that makes it sharper than almost anything the show had done. South Park is paid for by ads. The channel it airs on makes its money selling those little messages during the show, the same kind of ads the story is attacking, and the show knew it. The story does not pretend to stand above the thing it mocks. It is biting the hand that feeds it, on purpose, fully aware. And the most telling part is what happened in the real world while these episodes aired. The companies buying ad time on the show did not flinch. None of them pulled their ads in protest, because after that many years, the people buying ads knew what they were signing up for. The show attacked the ad business in the loudest way it could, and the ad business shrugged and kept paying, because the show was too good a place to sell things. That alone says something about how strong the ad machine is. You cannot embarrass it. It does not care if you mock it, as long as people are watching, because watching is the whole point. The story builds to a finale where the boys and the living ads come to a head, and the ads make their nature clear right to the end. Even as the human characters fight to break the ad's grip on the news, the ad named Leslie keeps doing what ads do, distracting, manipulating, slipping pop-ups in front of people's eyes to blind them at the key moment. And when the ads are finally beaten back, the final words carry a warning that lands like a cold hand. The defeated ad promises that people will never be rid of ads. The story lets the heroes win the battle, while making sure everyone understands they have not won the war. The ads will be back. They are always coming back because they pay for everything, and as long as they pay for everything, they will keep clawing for more control, no matter how many times they get pushed down. Look at where this sits in the long story of how South Park thinks about technology, and the shift in shape is as important as the shift in mood. The earlier episodes were single pictures, one company at a time, each trouble cleaned up by the end of its half hour. This is a story that runs and runs, a problem that grows across weeks and does not get tidied away, because the thing it is about does not get tidied away in real life either. Ads are not a visitor that comes and goes. They are the air of the internet, the thing that is always there, paying the bills and shaping what everyone sees. By telling it as one long, sprawling tale, the show matched its form to its subject. The ad problem is not a single event, it is a condition, ongoing, endless, woven into the whole way the modern world delivers information, and the story is built to feel that way. The deep idea underneath the silliness of living ads is one of the most serious the show ever reached for. When the same force that pays for information also gets to control information, then truth itself is for sale, and a person can no longer trust anything they are told. This is not a wild fantasy. It is a real worry about the real world. So much of what people read and watch is paid for by someone trying to sell them something, and the selling has gotten so clever, so hidden, so dressed up as honest content that telling the real from the paid has become genuinely hard. The show took that real, creeping worry and gave it a face. The girl named Leslie, an ad you cannot tell from a person, sitting in the classroom, smiling, reaching quietly into everything you think you know. The pattern that runs through every one of these episodes, the gift that turns into a trap, takes its widest form here. The gift is the entire free internet, all of it, every website and video and search that costs a person nothing. The trap is what pays for that gift, the ads, and what those ads do to a person's grip on the truth. People accepted the gift gladly, the whole free world at their fingertips, and never quite noticed the price written in the fine print, which is that everything they see has been touched by someone trying to sell them something, and the truth has gotten tangled up with the selling until they can no longer pull the two apart. The free internet is the most generous gift the new world ever offered, and the ads that fund it are the deepest trap because they reach not into a person's wallet or their friendships, but into the very information they use to understand the world. There is something almost frightening in how ordinary the villain is. The earlier episodes had villains a person could point at: Apple, Facebook, a ride company, a game maker. Here the villain is the ad, the most everyday thing online, so common that nobody even sees it as a thing anymore. The show's great move was to take that invisible, everywhere thing and make it visible, give it a body, let it walk around and scheme, so that for once, a person could actually see the force that shapes so much of what reaches their eyes. After watching the story, a person looks at the next ad differently, the next sneaky message dressed up as a real article, the next pop-up that pulls them off to a store, and feels the weight of what the show was warning about. The kid who watched this story might have found the living ads goofy, a funny idea about commercials coming to life. The grown person who watches it later, who has spent years unable to tell paid messages from real ones, who has felt the truth get harder and harder to find under the pile of things being sold, sees something much heavier. The show named a problem that has only grown since, the problem of a world where information and selling have melted together until no one can fully trust what they read. It dressed the warning up as a story about a school newspaper and a girl who is secretly an ad, and let the real fear grow quietly underneath. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So far, the show had chased the companies and machines reaching in from outside. The next long story would turn the camera around onto what ordinary people do to each other when a screen lets them hide their faces. The villain would not be a company or a machine. It would be a trusted father, alone in his basement at night. Section 9. The Man in the Basement. Every story so far had a force reaching in from outside. A website, a gadget, a ride company, a living ad. Something built by faraway people came into the town and did things to the people living there. The next long story turned that whole idea inside out. The danger this time did not arrive from a company headquarters somewhere over the horizon. It came from a person everyone in town already knew and trusted. A father, a husband, a respected man, sitting alone in his own basement at night, discovering something dark about himself that a screen had made easy to reach. The villain was not a machine. The villain was a regular man, and the screen only handed him the mask. This story runs across the whole of season 20, but its heart, the episode that plants everything, is the one called Skank Hunt. It is the second show of season 20, and it first aired on September 21st, 2016. The story it begins is about trolling, the act of going online to deliberately hurt and upset strangers for fun, hiding behind behind a fake name so no one knows who is doing it. The whole season grows from one question: who is the troll terrorizing the town, and why does a person become one at all? The trouble starts at the school, where someone going by a fake online name has been harassing people, posting cruel things, picking targets and tearing into them. The school holds a meeting for the parents, asking them to look at their own children, to figure out whether one of their kids might be the troll behind the attacks. The parents sit there worrying about which child could be so cruel, and the audience watching at home already knows the answer the parents cannot see. The troll is not a child at all. The troll is one of the parents in that very room. He is Gerald, the father of Kyle and Ike, a grown man with a respected job, a husband, a pillar of the town. By night, alone at his computer, he becomes the cruel stranger tearing people apart, and not a single person suspects him. That gap between the kind man everyone sees by day and the vicious stranger he becomes by night is the whole engine of the story. Gerald is shown going about his days cheerful and warm, dancing in the street, patient and good-natured with everyone around him. Then night falls, and he descends to his basement, pours himself a glass of red wine, sits at the screen, and pours out cruelty. He types things meant to wound, picks fights, mocks and insults strangers he has never met, and he loves it. He is having the time of his life. The screen lets him split himself in two, the good neighbor up in the light and the bully down in the dark, and the second self never has to answer for anything, because no one knows the two are the same man. The reason this works as satire is how ordinary Gerald is. He is not a monster lurking on the edge of town. He is the dad everyone likes, the responsible one, the kind of man people trust with serious things, and the show is making a hard point by choosing him. The troll is not some strange, broken creature off in a corner. The troll could be anyone, the nicest person you know, your own father, the respected man down the street, because the only thing standing between a decent person and cruelty, the show suggests, is whether they think they will get caught. Take away the chance of getting caught, hand a person a mask and a screen, and a part of them that polite life keeps locked away can come out to play. Gerald is proof that the capacity for it sits inside ordinary, well-liked people, waiting for the right hiding place. What Gerald says about why he does it cuts to the bone. He insists he is not really a troll, that he just likes messing with people because it is funny. He tells himself it is harmless, a game, a bit of fun at strangers' expense, nothing serious. That excuse is the most honest and the most damning part of his character. He has decided that because it amuses him, it cannot really be hurting anyone, because the people he targets are just names on a screen, not real to him, not people who go home and feel what he did. The screen turns his victims into pixels, into targets, into things that do not bleed, and so he can convince himself that hurting them is only a joke. The distance the screen creates is what lets him lie to himself about what he is doing. The story refuses to let that lie stand, and it does so in the cruelest way possible. Gerald, looking for a bigger target, attacks a website meant to raise awareness about breast cancer. The woman who runs it is a Danish athlete, a champion who won a gold medal, named Freja Olegard. When she is attacked, she does not crumble. She stands up in public and says she will not be frightened, that she will not let the troll intimidate her. To Gerald, sitting in his basement, this is not a brave woman drawing a line. It is a challenge, a new game, a target that fights back, which only makes it more fun. He sets his sights on her and goes harder. The trolls send cruel questions to her on a talk show, mocking her cancer, twisting the knife in public, and then Freja kills herself. The pressure of the relentless cruelty, the public mockery of her illness, becomes more than she can bear, and she ends her own life. The show takes the thing Gerald called harmless fun and shows exactly where it leads. A real woman, a champion, a survivor, is dead because a man in a basement somewhere decided that hurting her was funny and that she was not real enough to truly hurt. The joke that could not possibly damage anyone has killed a person. The screen that made her seem like a target turned out to be pointed at a living human being the whole time, and now she is gone. The deep idea underneath all of this is something the show had been circling for years and finally named outright. A screen lets a person hide their face, and hiding their face changes what they are willing to do. There is a kind of person who would never say a cruel word to someone standing in front of them, who is kind and warm in the flesh, and who becomes something else entirely the moment they can act without their name attached. The mask is the whole danger. It is not that the internet creates cruelty out of nothing. It is that the internet removes the thing that usually holds cruelty back, which is having to own what you do, having to be seen, having to face the person you hurt. Strip that away, and the cruelty that lives quietly inside ordinary people comes pouring out. Set this against where South Park started with technology, and the journey is almost complete. In the music episode, the new tool was the little guy's guy's friend, knocking the rich down a peg. In the middle years, the tools reached into people, taking their friendships, their money, their grip on what is real. Here, the tool does something different, and in some ways worse. It does not take something from the user. It releases something already inside the user, something dark and mean that polite life had kept chained. The danger has moved all the way inside the person. The screen is no longer just doing things to people. It is letting people do terrible things to each other and showing them a version of themselves they might have gone a whole life without meeting. There is something especially uncomfortable in how the show frames Gerald, because Gerald is usually the voice of decency in town. He is the thoughtful, fair-minded father, the one who lectures others about doing right. Making him the troll is a deliberate gut punch. The person most sure of his own goodness, most ready to judge others, turns out to harbor the meanest streak of all once he gets a mask to wear. The show is suggesting that the people most confident in their own decency might be exactly the ones with the most bottled up underneath, the most rage and superiority, looking for a quiet place to escape. Gerald's basement is where his real feelings come out, the ones his daylight self would never admit to, and they are ugly. The pattern that has run through every one of these episodes, the gift that turns into a trap, shifts shape again here and becomes more personal than ever. The gift is the freedom of the screen, the ability to speak out into the world without anyone knowing who you are, to be anyone, to say anything. It feels like power. It feels like fun. And the trap is what that freedom does to the person who uses it, the way it lets them become cruel, the way it splits them into a kind face and a vicious hidden self, the way it convinces them their cruelty is harmless, right up until it kills someone. The trap does not just catch the victim, Frasier. It catches Gerald too, turning a decent man into a person responsible for a death, a person who has to live with what his fun became. The show is honest enough to make Gerald's victims feel real, even as it shows why he could not. Frasier is not a punchline. Her bravery is real, her fear is real, her death is real and heavy, and the show treats it with a seriousness it usually saves for almost nothing. By making her so clearly a full human being, the show forces the audience to see what Gerald refused to see, that the names on the screen are people, that every cruel message lands on someone who feels it, that the distance the screen creates is a lie. Gerald told himself his targets were not real. The show makes sure the audience knows they were. There is a quiet warning in how easily the town fails to find the troll. The parents look at their children. The kids suspect each other. Everyone hunts for the monster, and the monster is sitting among them the whole time, smiling, dancing in the street, beloved. The show is saying that this kind of cruelty is impossible to spot from the outside, because the person doing it looks exactly like everyone else, often better than everyone else. The troll is not marked. There is no way to know, by looking, who becomes someone vicious the moment the lights go out and the screen comes on. It could be anyone. That is the unsettling truth the story keeps pressing. The nicest people you know go home, close the door, and you have no idea what they become. The kid who watched this might have laughed at the silly fake names and the basement and the wine. The grown person who watches it later, who has seen real people torn apart by anonymous strangers online, who has maybe felt the pull themselves of saying something cruel from behind a fake name, sees the harder thing. The show named a darkness that has only spread since, the way ordinary people turn vicious when handed a mask, the way the distance of a screen lets cruelty feel like a game until the moment it kills. It put that warning inside a story about a beloved dad with a secret and let the dread grow underneath the comedy. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Gerald's cruelty would not stay in one basement. It spread from a school to a famous athlete, and from there, it would touch a whole country. The world had grown tired of trolls who could never be found, and across the ocean, a plan was forming to tear every mask off at once, a cure that would prove every bit as frightening as the sickness. Section 10. The whole world. Traced Gerald's cruelty had grown from a school nuisance into something that killed a champion, and through it all, he stayed safe behind his mask. Untouched, unfound, free. That safety was the whole problem, and the world in the story had finally had enough of it. If the sickness was trolls who could hide their faces forever, then the cure, the obvious cure, the cure that seemed only fair, was to tear every mask off at once, drag every hidden person into the open, make it so that no one online could ever pretend to be a stranger again. The plan that formed across the ocean to do exactly that is where season 20 turns its sharpest, because the show takes that cure, the one that sounds so reasonable, and reveals it to be every bit as terrifying as the sickness it was meant to heal. The plan comes from Denmark, the home country of Frasier, the athlete the trolls drove to her death. A grieving, furious nation builds a website, and they call it Troll Trace. The idea behind it is simple, and, at first, sounds almost like justice. The website can take any troll, troll, any hidden person spewing cruelty from behind a fake name, and trace them back. Find out exactly who they really are. Expose them to the world. No more masks. No more hiding. The moment anyone complains about a troll, the website can reach through the screen and yank the real person out into the daylight for everyone to see. A man like Gerald, who hurt people for years while staying invisible, would suddenly have nowhere left to hide. For a moment, this feels like the answer. Everything the earlier part of the season showed about trolling, the cruelty, the death, the way the screen let bad people stay safe, all of it screams for exactly this kind of solution. If the danger is people hiding who they are, then forcing everyone to be known seems like it would fix it. The trolls would have to stop because they could be caught. The mask, the thing that made the cruelty possible, would be gone forever. The show lets that hope sit for a beat, lets the cure look like a cure before it begins to reveal the horror folded inside it. The horror is this: the website does not just plan to expose the trolls, it plans to expose everyone. It can trace any person and reveal their entire history online. Every single thing they have ever done, said, searched, looked at, or typed on the internet, all of it, dragged out and made public. And here the show plants the real terror. It is not only the cruel people who have things to hide, everyone does. Every single person who has ever used the internet has a history full of things they would never want anyone to see. Private thoughts, embarrassing searches, foolish moments, things said in anger, things looked at in secret, the whole messy record of being a flawed human being with a screen and a moment alone. The website that promised to catch the bad guys turns out to be a machine that can destroy anyone, because there is no such thing as a person whose secret history would survive being shown to the world. The episode that shows what this actually does to people is one called Fort Collins, the 6th show of season 20, first aired on October 26, 2016. In it, the website is tested on a real town, and the town's entire internet history gets exposed all at once. The result is chaos. People turn on each other, lives are wrecked. The exposure leads to death and destruction as a community is torn apart by suddenly knowing everything about everyone. Drawn in a more detailed, more realistic style than the usual cartoon to mark how serious it is, the town becomes a picture of what happens when every secret comes out at once. There is no one left standing clean. Everyone has something, and once everyone can see everyone's something, the whole web of polite life that holds people together comes apart in a moment. The deep idea here is one of the most important the show ever reached, and it is about the price of a cure that goes too far. The trolls were a real problem. The cruelty was real, the death was real, and something needed to be done. But the fix that was built, the fix that promised to solve it completely, was a fix that could only work by destroying privacy entirely, by making it so that no one anywhere could ever have a secret again. And a world with no secrets, the show argues, is not a safe world. It is a nightmare. The thing that protects the cruel man hiding in his basement is the same thing that protects the ordinary person's private life, their embarrassing moments, their quiet shames, the parts of themselves they keep hidden not because they are evil, but because they are human. You cannot strip the mask off the troll without stripping it off everyone, and once everyone is exposed, no one is safe. The story makes this personal through Gerald himself. He started the whole mess. He is the troll who caused the death that led to the cure, and as the cure closes in, threatening to expose his entire history, Gerald, the man who told himself his cruelty was harmless fun, suddenly faces the prospect of everyone knowing exactly what he is. The thing he did to others, the public exposure, the tearing down, is now coming for him and for everyone else along with him. The man who lived behind a mask is about to lose it, and so is the whole world, all because of what he started. There is a grim justice in it, and also a warning. The trap he helped build does not catch only the guilty. It catches everyone, including the people who never trolled anyone, who only wanted to live their lives with their private moments left private. Set this against the long story of how South Park thinks about technology, and the season completes a full and frightening picture. The trolling part of the season showed the danger of people being able to hide, the cruelty that anonymity unleashes. The troll trace part shows the danger of the opposite, the cruelty of total exposure, a world where no one can hide anything ever. The show puts the audience in a vice. Both extremes are nightmares. A world where everyone can hide breeds trolls and cruelty and death. A world where no one can hide breeds the destruction of every private life on Earth. There is no comfortable answer offered, no safe middle handed over neatly. The show leaves a person staring at two horrors and understanding that the internet has dragged the whole world toward having to choose between them. There is a real worry sitting under the cartoon, and it has only grown sharper with time. So much of what every person does online is recorded somewhere, stored, kept, a history piling up year after year of searches and messages and things looked at in private. Most people barely think about about it. They act online as though the moment passes and disappears, when in truth the record stays, sitting somewhere, complete. The show took that quiet, ignored truth and made it loud and terrifying. What if all of it, the whole record, could be pulled up and shown to the world? Who could survive that? The answer is no one. And that answer is what makes the episode land like a cold weight. Everyone watching has a history they would not want shown, and the show forces them to feel how exposed they really are. The way the show resolves the threat is telling, and a little hopeful in a bleak way. The trolls, faced with the website that would expose everyone, decide to fight back by trolling Denmark itself, by tormenting the whole country so relentlessly that the people running TrollTrace get a taste of the very cruelty they were trying to stamp out. The workers at the website, the ones building the machine to expose everyone, end up being trolled so hard that they themselves want to quit the internet, to leave social media, to escape the cruelty. The cure makers get hit by the sickness and they break. The show is making a circular point. The people who wanted to end trolling forever, who built a terrifying machine to do it, were themselves vulnerable to trolling, themselves human, themselves capable of being hurt and driven away. No one is above it. No one is safe from it. The whole thing folds back on itself. The pattern that has shaped every one of these episodes, the gift that turns into a trap, reaches one of its most chilling forms here. The gift is a fix, a cure, a promise to end a real and terrible problem, to catch the cruel people and make the internet safe. It is offered in good faith, born of real grief, and it sounds like exactly what the world needs. The trap is what the cure actually is, a machine that can destroy anyone by exposing everything, a fix so powerful that it becomes more dangerous than the disease. The gift of safety turns out to require giving up all privacy, and a world with no privacy is no safer than a world full of trolls. The thing that promised to protect everyone turns out to be the thing most able to harm everyone, and people reached for it because the problem it solved was so real and so painful that the price seemed worth paying, right up until they saw the price. There is something the show understands about fear and overreaction that makes this story matter. When something terrible happens, when cruelty kills someone, the natural human urge is to demand a fix that makes sure it can never happen again. A total fix, an absolute fix. And the show is warning that the total fix, the absolute fix, is often the most dangerous thing of all because it requires giving up something precious, in this case the right to a private life, the right to keep some part of yourself unseen. The trolls were a problem. The answer of exposing every human being completely was a catastrophe dressed as a solution. The show is asking people to be careful about the cures they reach for in their anger and grief, because the cure can swallow the things that made life worth living in the first place. The kid who watched this might have found it a wild, fast-moving adventure about trolls in a foreign country and a strange website. The grown person who watches it later, who lives in a world where their entire history is recorded and stored and could in theory be pulled up at any time, sees the deeper dread. The show named a fear that grows truer every year, the fear that nothing online is ever really forgotten, that the record of every private moment sits waiting, and that the line between catching the guilty and exposing the innocent is thinner than anyone wants to believe. It wrapped that fear in a season-long story about a dead athlete and a Danish website, and let the cold truth settle in underneath the chaos. Across all these years and episodes, the show had watched technology grow from a tool that humbled rich whiners into a force that could expose every human being on Earth. The companies got bigger, the dangers got deeper, and the trap grew from one lonely kid's friend count to a machine that could swallow a whole town's secrets at once. What began as a cheerful joke about millionaires crying over free music had curdled, year by year, into something closer to a warning, and the warning was always the same underneath. The gift is real, and so is the price, and the price is usually hidden until it is too late to hand the gift back. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.